golf has 4 major championships. Fishing has 1.
It's the only really life-changing event that we fish.
The Classic would certainly be the one tournament I haven't won and one tournament I'd like to win. There's only 45 people here that can make it out of 700,000.
This is all about letting it all hang out right here.
The 2001 Bassmasters Tournament Trail, presented by Long John Silver's. This is the 2001 Bassmasters Classic from New Orleans, Louisiana. Brought to you by Evertroll.
Some people call it New Orleans. Others call it the Big Easy. But 45 of the world's best bass anglers were calling it anything but. Hello, everyone. I'm Ron Franklin. The Bassmasters Classic is the pinnacle event for the sport of bass fishing. 45 guys battled for 3 days for $100,000 and the title as best in the world. And that's just for starters, because with sponsors' endorsements, the money can actually go as high as $1 million, and it's generally considered to set a professional angler for life. For 2001, the playing field was the Louisiana Delta, a huge fishery. Stretching from New Orleans to the Gulf of Mexico, there are hundreds of square miles of swamp, marsh, canals, and lakes, even extending eastward across the Mississippi River. Because the Delta is so large, the anglers break it into 4 major areas with running times that directly affect fishing time. West of the launch site at Bayou Signet are Bayou Black and Des Almonds. These areas are quicker to get to, and that gives competitors more fishing time. The Classic here in '99 was won in Bayou Book, which is located in the Des Almonds area. 2 areas south and east of the launch are Delacroix and Venice. These areas are known to hold good fish, but tougher to reach. Long, tough runs and short fishing days were the trade-off for the big fish gamble. And only a select group get to make that choice, as qualifying for the Bassmasters Classic is no easy task.
Childhood dream, making it to the World Series, and one day hearing the crowd cheer as they drive home the winning run. It's a lofty goal, but what little leaguer doesn't spend a little time in the outfield dreaming of stardom? Qualifying for the Bassmasters Classic was a childhood dream for most of these anglers. While their friends were watching Saturday morning cartoons, they were fishing with the likes of Bill Dance, Jimmy Houston, or Roland Martin as they lived the dream through the magic of television. Now, the dream is bigger than life.
We had a river right by the house, and it seemed like I couldn't get any work done for wanting to go to that river. And I can still remember standing on that river on the rocks, fishing and throwing, thinking one day this could be in the Bassmasters Classic.
Yeah, on Saturday mornings, I really wasn't watching cartoons. I was watching Jimmy Houston and Bill Dance and all the fishing shows, the Bassmasters.
Being with these guys that I grew up admiring and watching over the years it's a dream come true.
The top 25 anglers from the Bassmaster Top 150 Tour, 5 anglers from both the Eastern and the Central Division, 4 from the Western Division, and 5 from the Federation ranks have qualified for the big dance here in New Orleans. Well, the rules for the Classic are different than the other tournaments that the anglers fish throughout the season. They're only allowed to bring 2 bags and get all of the tackle that they can squeeze into them. They're not even allowed to bring other tackle to keep in their cars or their rooms. Now, let's say you lose that special lure on day 2. Well, there's no run to the local tackle shop in this event. The only way to acquire or replace tackle is from another Classic contender, if you think you can talk him out of it. Each of the anglers are allowed to bring 10 rods and reels to the event, along with 2 spare reels, in case there's a mechanical failure. But the big rule difference this week, no dip nets. During the year, these pros land most of their tournament fish by netting. But here in New Orleans, it's just between man and fish. The Classic is always a tournament where versatility is the key. And knowing these guys, they won't have any problem adapting to a few rule changes.
The Bassmasters, brought to you by Long John Silver's, that one-of-a-kind taste. Evertroll, stay out longer, catch more fish. Pennzoil Marine, it's the right equipment for fishing. Berkeley Trilene, catch more fish. And by Bass Pro Shops, the world's leading supplier of premium fishing tackle.
The Louisiana Delta has always been known as a great fishery, but wide-ranging conditions over the last year have brought about significant changes. Fish fisherman and 99 Classic winner Davey Height talked about those conditions and the challenges facing the 2001 Classic anglers.
In order to win the Bassmasters Classic, you want everything to go right. Well, here's the problem this week, the conditions. Now, as you can see, it's a beautiful bluebird day. It's 90 degrees and the water temperature hovering around 88 to 89 degrees. But here's the problem. It's called Barry, a tropical depression about 180 miles southeast of the tip of Venice. Here with me right now to discuss these problems is Mr. Davey Height. Davey, you won the Bassmasters Classic right here in 1999, a great victory, and now you know what these guys are faced with. This storm is throwing real problems at them.
Tough conditions, Fish. You know, this tropical storm Barry, it's just kind of sitting out there and it's keeping the water pushed in. I really kind of thought this tournament would be won in Venice, but that storm is keeping the water in, the tides are not going out, and it's so important to be able to catch those fish, especially in the Venice area, to have an outgoing tide, and those guys just haven't gotten it all week.
We've already had one major storm, the first of the season, Allison, come in here. During the 6 days of official practice, all the anglers were complaining, man, the fishing's tough down there, because that storm really affected the place in July.
It did. You know, to win a Bassmaster Classic, you got to find an area that's got a good school of fish in. And right before the official 6 days of practice they had, 24 inches of rain in 24 hours, so it was extremely tough then, probably even tougher than now. So it was amazing how many of these guys went out the first day of competition looking for fish. And that tropical storm made it just as tough now as it was then, so they've got their hands cut out for them.
These storms really affect the cover that these guys fish. What's going on with the grass this week?
Well, it wasn't the two storms, it was the drought last year, Fish. Last summer we had extreme drought. Salt water really pushed into the Delta, killed off a lot of the vegetation. So the cover is very limited.
Also hearing about some herbicides.
Yep, they've been spraying a lot. I know a couple of top guys, first day of competition, they had found some good areas. They go into there and the guys are in there spraying off the hydrants.
Long runs this week. We're talking about leaving Bayou Signet and running 2.5 hours, some of the guys saying round trip. What's that like when the winds pick up down there?
It's just terrible physically, but you know what? It's the Bassmasters Classic, and they're going to do it no matter how tough those waves are.
Day one, Jay Yellis catches the biggest bass so far at 4 pounds, 11 ounces. Robert Lee started fishing with a jig, but found this area called for a spinnerbait. He lands in fourth with 11 pounds and 1 ounce. Kevin VanDam traveled 90 miles to Bayou Black, but he thinks this area will be less affected by the oncoming storm. Bringing in 11 pounds, 5 ounces, Kevin places third. Fishing in his 13th Classic, the veteran Harold Allen said, hey, this place is tough enough to fish under normal conditions, and now Mother Nature is going to get right in the middle of things. His catch of 11 pounds, 13 ounces put him in second. Traveling over 100 miles, David Walker chooses to fish the Venice area. A very, very rough ride pays off with 12 pounds, 4 ounces and the lead after day one. Day two begins with Tropical Storm Barry bringing high winds and muddy water conditions into the Delta. Robert Lee, an experienced Delta angler, holds on to fourth. First round leader David Walker struggles, finding his best spots flooded, windblown, and muddy, but he hangs on to third with 20 pounds and 6 ounces.
Well, it actually went about as well as I hoped it would be. I mean, I got my 5 bites that I needed to catch another 10, 12-pound stringer. The only problem was I only managed to land 3 of them. You know, when you lose 2 of the fish in a tournament like this, you just can't do that.
Competing in his second Classic, Scott Rook, a tackle store manager from Little Rock, Arkansas, moves all the way from 6th to 3rd with a 2-day total of 20 pounds, 13 ounces. That's just 10 ounces behind the leader.
I ended up catching about 10 keepers today. They actually bit just a little bit better today than they did yesterday as far as numbers go. I got 5 and culled a couple and I left, so hopefully there's enough for tomorrow.
Kevin VanDam's plan pays off with Bayou Black bringing him another 10-pound, 2-ounce catch and the lead with a 2-day total of 21 pounds, 7 ounces.
You know, I got the bites okay today. I just didn't really get any big bites today, and you know, I'm going to have to do something a little bit different to catch a few bigger fish tomorrow to have a shot to win.
When we come back, day 3, the final 5, and the winner of the 2001 Bassmasters Classic. Day 3 brought us Tropical Storm Barry, stalled in the Gulf and slowing the fishing. Even so, Gerald Swindle managed a 5-fish limit that put him in the lead.
Shot at that. Let's go to the scales. 5 bass, 9 pounds, 6 ounces.
After that, it came down to the final 5. Names are drawn to determine who weighs in first. Harold Allen is called and weighs in 10 pounds, 9 ounces for a total of 27 pounds and 10 ounces. Tod Faircloth walks to the scales with a bag 10-3. That gives him a total of 26 pounds, 11 ounces. Scott Wook's name is called, and he brings a bag weighing in at 10-7 for a total of 31 pounds and 4 ounces. Then Kevin VanDam is chosen. He brings a 5-fish creel to the scales and weighs in at 10-14 for a total of 32 pounds, 5 ounces. That leaves only David Walker.
David Walker fishing in his 2nd Classic here. Made it easily into the Classic, ripping into that live well with reckless abandon. He is ready to see what the outcome of this 2001 Bassmasters Classic is going to be. He has got a shot at it.
David, I've never been more nervous in my life. I'm telling you what, I'm a total wreck. We was standing back there, and Kevin said, "I'm nervous." I said, "I can barely speak. I mean, I don't know what to think about this whole deal."
We're going to go to the scales. He needs 12 pounds even. Watch it. 10-13. Kevin VanDam is your Classic champion. He's done it. He did it. He did it. Ladies, gentlemen, bass anglers everywhere, I am honored to present you the 2001 Bassmasters Classic World Champion, Mr. Kevin VanDam.
He's fished on a regular basis on the BASS Tour for 11 years. He holds 3 Angler of the Year titles and has 11 Classic appearances. And now he adds the 2001 Classic Championship. Ladies and gentlemen, Kevin VanDam, congratulations. And in New Orleans, after you won it, we said your life would change. Has it?
It's been pretty wild since I've gotten home from the Classic, for sure.
Kev, what kind of schedule are you going to maintain? Sometimes when a guy wins, he almost takes the next year off or takes part of the year off just because there's so much involvement with sponsorships and everything. What are you going to do?
Well, you know, I'm pretty busy as it is, and I'm going to fish the whole tour next year. You know, I'm a competitor, and that's really that's what'll keep my sanity.
And plus the fact your skills are not as honed, is not as sharp when you're not fishing on a regular basis, I would think.
I love it, and you know, to take me away from it, it would hurt me.
You came on television with us on Friday. Things were looking very good, but you also made a point. You said in Classics past, you've had a couple of good days, but there was a down day, and that's what you really had to work hard to avoid against.
Yeah, you just can't have that bad day, and you know, I was real fortunate. I mean, I fished a perfect tournament.
Yeah, you did. Very, very consistent. We're going to have more time with Kevin later, including his winning strategy. When we return, and look back at the history of the Classic and highlights of the Final 5 on the Louisiana Delta.
The 2001 Bassmasters Tournament Trail, presented by Long John Silver's.
It began with a man and his dream. A dream that one of America's most enjoyable activities could actually become a legitimate sport and rise to the lofty heights of professional sports like golf, football, and baseball. Met with skepticism, Ray Scott held firmly to his vision. His natural flair for organization, salesmanship, and promotion launched tournaments with names like the Dixie Invitational, the Rebel Invitational, the All-American. Small affairs at first, but like a seed, the infant tour began to grow, and BASS anglers coast to coast took notice. Names like Dance, Martin, and Parker were thrust into celebrity status. The organization captured the support of the fishing industry at large and a very anxious public.
You wouldn't expect the World Series to be played on a Little League diamond, and if you wouldn't, certainly you wouldn't expect this quality of fisherman, the world's greatest 24, to go to a fish hatchery for a tournament. So we picked the toughest lake we could possibly find. You headed for Lake Mead.
Classic is the ultimate dream of every bass fisherman in the world, and my dreams come true.
Although there can only be one champion, the Classic actually involves 44 other anglers. We can't show you how they all fished, but we can highlight the final 5. Tod Faircloth qualified through the Central Invitational Circuit. Fishing his second Classic, he ranked 6th of the top 150 trail.
In the morning, or under low light conditions, I was using a Stanley titanium spinnerbait with wedge blades. Yesterday morning, I was first flight, so I got out there early, and I caught a limit probably in 15 minutes on the spinnerbait. This morning, I was in the last flight going out, and when I got there, the sun was up, and you know, I really missed the early morning bite. I didn't catch a fish on the spinnerbait today. When the sun came out and on up in the day, this is a brand new bait made by Lake Fort Tackle. It's called a craw tube. I was flipping this up with a half-ounce mega weight on a braided line. I was really punching it through the grass, the hyacinth and stuff, and the fish really got up underneath it once the sun came out. And that's how I probably caught my better fish doing that throughout the tournament.
With 3 days of fishing, Tod brings in 3 limits with a total of 26 pounds, 11 ounces, and finishes 5th. Now, I know I said the final 5, but it's actually 6. You see, Gerald Swindle tied Tod for 5th place. Fishing in his 3rd Classic with 8 top 10 finishes, Gerald ranks 25th on the top 150 tour.
The third morning of the event, I ran back to the Bayou Black area, still trying to run west and get far away from the hurricane barrier as I can. And it hadn't had any effect on me over so far. And I got there this morning, guys, and I run to the back, and it was muddy.
I ain't liking hurricane barrier.
When I got in there, I didn't know whether to just panic and leave, so I stopped, I picked up this green pumpkin worm. This is one of the worms I've caught a lot of my bass on, and I thought I'll just throw it in there. You know, it can't hurt. I throw it in there, and second or third cast, I caught one about 1.5 pounds. And I worked that general area, and I got a bad feeling about it. I went to my second area, which had more grass, hoping to filter out more of the mud. And I got in there, and it wasn't as bad, but it was still rising. And when you see this water right here that's muddy, you know some of that other stuff got muddy. I stuck with a Zoom dead ringer 6-inch worm, cast it to the edge of the grass and trying to swim it. I was able to catch 3 bass in about 45 minutes of being in that canal, maybe an hour. As we sit in there, you could actually watch it get darker and get muddier and start rolling. I swapped over to a Zoom tube, black red flake tube, and put a big glass rattle in it so I could try to make a lot of racket. And I was flipping these isolated clumps of grass and shake that bait and make a lot of noise in that small muddy water. In a small area in that muddy water, they could come in, find it, and bite it. And I actually was able to catch 1 key fish, about 2 1/4 on that, and I catch my 5th keeper. That's what it's all about.
Tying for 5th place, Gerald brings in a 3-day total of 26 pounds, 11 ounces. When we come back, it's Harold Allen's turn and a look into the psychology of tournament bass fishing. You have to say Harold Allen is certainly the seasoned veteran of the Final Five. 28 years on the tour. He's fishing his 13th Classic, and he has 21 top 10 finishes and ranks 20th on the top 150 circuit.
I've been running to Venice every day, about an hour and 45 minutes one way, and got down there and the water was higher than it's been all week. I really struggled. I caught 1 fish fairly early. I went to a spot where I caught my 2 best ones late yesterday afternoon, and I thought I could run into this morning and catch some on the spinnerbait. I've been catching 2 a day on the spinnerbait, you know, accent spinnerbait. Left there, went to another canal, worked it pretty hard, nothing. So I finally said, well, I'm going back to where I caught them Thursday. I went in there and I'm working. And 1:45 I found them. I caught 7 keepers in an hour after 1:45. But we got in there and started throwing a little old reaction worm, and the color is a chili June bug. It's a regular June bug, but it's got some red flake in it too. You know, so they were kind of picky. You know, you had to kind of feed it to them. I missed 2 or 3, but that's the only I can get a bite. Caught every fish I caught today on worm.
Harold racks up a 3-day total of 27 pounds, 10 ounces, and finishes 4th. If you want to find out just exactly how serious these guys are about their profession, meet Dr. Julie Ness, sports psychologist. Some people are going to be shocked in the fact that you deal with professional bass fishermen along with other sports. You've been doing that for a while.
I've been working in the fishing industry about 5 years.
How difficult was it? Because you might have fished a lot when you were coming up, but you had to go through a brand new set of rules and terminologies, didn't you?
I did. When I work with athletes, even if I haven't had experience in their sport, the things that I talk about stay the same: confidence, focus, but the language around it changes just a little bit.
Who did you go to help you?
Well, Ken Cook was my first client, and he actually helped me learn the language of fishing.
So you put together your own little dictionary, huh?
I did.
Talk about the eccentricities, the difficulties, the pressures with this sport compared to other sports.
Well, in all sports, the mental game will influence your behaviors. It will either help you or hurt you. Traditional sports would have a different language like skill and talent, where fishermen would say instinct, but it's all the same thing. It's applied experience.
Fishing is probably as mental or more mental than any other sport, because we're dealing with an opponent that we can't see. You're dealing with unknowns, unknowable situations. So your mental state of mind plays a bigger role probably in this sport than any other.
The mental aspect is you get down on yourself, you start getting, well, I'm just going to give up, I'm not going to fish anymore. You just can't do that. You have to have that strong positive attitude. And the positive attitude is the most important thing in fishing, by far.
The mental game is so important, because it's not a physical sport like football or baseball where, you know, you got to run a 4-flat 40, you got to be 260 pounds. You're dealing with fish, okay, and they don't change a whole lot. But your attack and your mental thought process and how you approach them and how you adapt to change, it's all mental. All the guys are good mechanically, but they're just, it's the ones that have it up here, you know, and have it figured out up here and able to control themselves. they win.
Can you take a guy who is one of those that if the first thing in the morning something goes wrong for him, all of a sudden negative thoughts come into his mind? How do you change a guy from being like that?
Well, the first thing is you have to recognize your thinking. Once you do, then you can start changing it, but it would be more proactive in what to do rather than what could possibly go wrong. So you continue to play your game, or you continue to fish your game, if you want to change the language.
Okay, the Bassmasters Classic. It is the U.S. Open. It is the Super Bowl. Anything you want to wrap in there to show that, I mean, this is number one as far as these guys are concerned. What are the pressures here that make it different from another event, and how does a person prepare?
Well, for one thing, any championship, your distractions are going to be magnified. There's just more press, more family, more friends, more things to try to distract you from what you're doing. And also with the Classic, it's the tournament where you want to win, and being second place or anything less doesn't really matter. So you might have a different game plan than normally during the season, where you would set out to just make a good show. At the Classic, you want to win. Now, if you're not used to mentally preparing for that, it can feel as strange as fishing with different equipment. So you have to be prepared in that direction.
Dr. Julie Ness, sports psychologist, thanks very much. Very, very enlightening.
The Bassmasters Pro Tip, brought to you by Evertroll.
Whenever I'm on an unfamiliar body of water and I'm trying to catch fish, one of the things that I try to do is take a top-to-bottom approach. A buzzbait is the perfect surface lure for covering water under low light conditions and getting bites, catching fish. If they blow up on it and start missing it, the next thing I'm going to pick up is a topwater bait. A small popper like this I can take and throw into those same places where fish may have blown up on my bait and missed it, and work it slowly and still be on the surface and possibly get a bite. As the light conditions begin to change and the low light situation fades, sun gets brighter, I start taking more of a subsurface approach. I'm not going to go straight to the bottom, but I'm going to take a bait like this that's a shallow running crankbait or spinnerbait, and I'm going to fish those same areas. Until I can get a bite, I want to cover as much water as I possibly can and do it efficiently. This is one of the baits that I'm going to use. Once I've narrowed my area down, I'm going to my favorite bait, my favorite technique. I'll take something like a Zoom brush hog, and I'm going to Texas rig it where I can throw it in and around that cover, and I can put it right where those fish live. I can take that little bait and slip it in there and possibly get bites that other people wouldn't get.
The 2001 Bassmasters Tournament Trail, presented by Long John Silver's. This is the 2001 Bassmasters Classic from New Orleans, Louisiana. Brought to you by Evertroll.
Hello once again, I'm Ron Franklin. Welcome back to the 2001 Bassmasters Classic highlights. He led the Classic on day one and stayed in contention till the final weigh-in. David Walker was fishing only his second Classic. With 4 years on the tour, he ranks 13th on the top 150 circuit. An hour and 45-minute run put David Walker back on the west side of Venice. His area was holding a lot of fish and had yet to be affected by the oncoming storm.
Today I get down there to go to it because I knew it had some clear water in it. That's where I wanted to start at. I get down there today and the water's come up at least another foot and a half, I guess. So it's up maybe 3 foot over the first day where I was at. That's the way to start it.
Despite the conditions, David stuck with his pattern and found exactly what he was looking for.
I go in there anyway and I just fish a few minutes and I catch a keeper. A couple minutes later I catch another keeper. Then I lose a fish. But that's it. That's the end of the spot. And so at that point, then I had to start hunting. I mean, I really did. I had to move around a lot. A lot of times I just kept the trolling motor down and I'd give it the half throttle, just keep moving around, just keep looking, trying to find some more areas close to where I had been fishing at.
At this level of competition, these anglers are masters at adaptation. Along with areas, David had to make several other changes to put a limit in the boat.
Yesterday when I was fishing, I was flipping a 5-inch tube with a 5/16 ounce sinker on it. But even with that, the wind is blowing so hard down there, it's compacted the duckweed and the hyacinths to the point that they're so thick that when you'd pitch in there, your bait would just, the wind would just blow it out to the side. It'd pull it right along on top of the water. So what I did today is I went to a 3/4 ounce jig right here. And I thought the heavier bait would allow me to feel what I'm doing a little bit better, and I was hoping that, because with the water being deeper and it's getting a little muddier, that a bigger bait like that would be easier for the fish to find. So I'd put a big rattle in it, and I'd just work it up and down, just keep hopping that thing up and down, and that's the way I got all my bites today. I just keep working that thing up and down, and all of a sudden, sometimes they just explode on it. The water would bust around it. I think the fish were actually coming to it, you know, hunting the bait down.
Day 2 saw David lose 2 of his needed 5 fish. Even so, his 3-day total of 31 pounds, 3 ounces brought him a solid 3rd finish. With the launching of the new outdoor website on ESPN.com, we decided to go to you, the fan, and find out what questions you had for Kevin about this year's Classic. And our first question comes from Oklahoma City, Scott Smith. He wants to know, with all the hoopla and press at the Classic, how in the world do you stay focused?
You know, in the beginning, it was really hard for me. You know, there's so much going on in the hotels and stuff, and so many writers, you know, asking you questions and stuff. But I just learned that when I'm out on the water, I just got to stay focused and concentrate on the job at hand.
That's one of the questions I had also, in the fact that huge hotels, centrally located, and people mean well, but they want a well-wish, plus the writers want to get that one more quote or something. You almost have to sprint through the lobby, don't you?
Yeah, you know, you just don't have a lot of time when you're there, so that little bit of time that you have in the boatyard is a good time to kind of contemplate your game plan for the next day.
Take a look at the next question. This one comes from Guy Lombardo of Hamburg, Pennsylvania, and he wants to know, how much time do you spend developing a pattern, and at what point do you just give up and try something new?
Well, you know, for me, I kind of use what I call the 10-minute rule. If I'm fishing for more than 10 minutes with the same bait or in the same area without a bite or seeing a fish or a follow or anything, I'm going to make some kind of change. You know, sometimes I'll just change lures. Other times I'm going to totally leave the area.
Now, people don't realize, but on Tuesday was the practice day. Then when the tournament started on Thursday, you went to your first 2 spots, and they had been sprayed by the oil companies because that's where they take their boats through.
I was just shocked. I mean, 2 days earlier, I mean, these areas were pretty, the green, the grass was everywhere, water hyacinths everywhere, and I went in there and everything's laying over dead. And the first one I pulled into, I didn't even make a cast. I turned around and left. The second one had some deeper water and some other good trees that I thought perhaps some fish, you know, still I might be able to catch them off of. And I fished there for, you know, half hour, 45 minutes, and it just wasn't happening. So I went, you know, I went to my backup spot.
So you were changing on the fly?
You really, in the Classic, you have to. You know, you have to think on your feet.
All right, our next question comes from Baytown, Texas. And Bobby Bren asked, the Louisiana Delta is such a tough fishery. It's unfamiliar water. How in the world do you learn to safely navigate to and from your fishing spot?
Well, the good thing about down there is they have great maps, and along with the GPS, you know, you can find your way around. It all looks the same. So I've got my map out on my lap, and I'm looking at the GPS, and you know, once you get to the area, it's pretty easy.
Can be dangerous, and you do have to be very careful. Kev, another question for you. I want to know, what do you think of fellow angler Mark Davis?
Well, Mark's been a longtime friend of mine, and obviously he's one of the best anglers that's out there. I mean, he's won 3 Angler of the Year titles in this decade, and you know, I've got a tremendous amount of respect for him.
Well, coming up next, a look at Mark Davis, 2001 BASS Angler of the Year.
Beyond the Tournament Trail, presented by Long John Silver's.
Mark's one to say, oh, I've got an acre of pain, and then he just goes on with it. But when he told me, he said, I've had injuries before, but this is something really bad. That's when reality comes crashing in, when they're saying you need to take a year off.
My doctors were telling me, well, you know, if you were a pitcher, you know, in baseball, they wouldn't let me pitch for ball for a year, and you don't really need to be back out there casting for a year. And I said, well, guys, I really don't have a year. I've got to, you going to get on with this.
In 1995, Mark Davis accomplished a feat unmatched in BASS history, winning in the same year both the Angler of the Year title and the Bassmasters Classic. After a 10-year struggle, Mark had finally tasted success, adding 5 more trips to the Classic and another Angler of the Year title in 1998. Mark's success continued. Then, in 1999, the rigorous day-in and day-out physical demands of a professional tournament career took its toll on Mark's body.
No, the last time we were at New Orleans in '99, I had a torn muscle in this left elbow that prohibited me from fishing with a casting rod. Of course, casting rod, you hold your left hand wide with your right hand, so my left arm was out of commission. I also had some problems with my right shoulder, but that didn't keep me from fishing, but the elbow did.
He even thought about not going to the Classic and having his surgery then. As our schedule works, there's not a good time.
The elbow was a torn tendon, a torn muscle that was actually torn off the bone. As I found out, it actually comes from using your wrist and putting a lot of torque on your wrist. It's exactly what we do when we're fishing.
Until they actually operated, I tried not to think about him never fishing again. But once I got to thinking about it, I just prayed that he would be able to fish again.
Woo, son!
After 2 major surgeries, one on his left elbow, the other on his right shoulder, and 9 months of excruciating rehab, Mark returned to the tournament trail. And with this year's incredible performance, ending in his 3rd Angler of the Year title, Mark put his deepest fears to rest.
Just a year ago, I had missed the Classic. I was in pain. I wasn't fishing good. I was worried about my career. And then to come back and win Angler of the Year for the 3rd time, that really made it sweet. I think the 3rd time is the sweetest because, you know, I get a little more age on me, and I don't think, even my wife, she didn't even realize how concerned I was about my fishing career just a year ago.
This one, though, I think the reassurance, it was just kind of like a reassurance that everything was okay.
With the exception of Harold Allen and Paul Elias, this year's top 10 was dominated by young anglers. And Scott Wook was exceptional. With barely 5 years on the tour and fishing only his 2nd Classic, he gave Kevin a good run for his money.
It started off pretty good. I caught a fish right off the bat this morning. It got a little slow on me. I caught another little keeper, and I really struggled. The water came up. I thought the water coming up would help some, but it kind of pushed a lot of mud in the area that I was fishing in. They just didn't seem to bite that well. I probably didn't get 7 or 8 bites all day, but I managed to catch 5 keepers. You know, I went in there and spent all my time in my area that I've been fishing all week and fished slow and methodical and did the best I could. I caught a couple today on a Mismo black red flake 4-inch tube using a 4-aught hook and a 5/16 ounce slip sinker. And I've got a rattle in it too, and I think the rattle played a big key. It's a tube rattle put out by Mismo. I ran into Keith Green today, and he told me he's catching them on a Bandit 100 series crankbait around some of the where the canals intersect on the points there. He ended up catching my best fish on that, so we really owe a thanks to Keith for that.
Thank you, Keith Green.
Bringing in a 5-fish creel all 3 days, Scott Rook's 3-day total of 31 pounds 4 ounces put him just 1 pound and 1 ounce shy of the championship. When we return, it's highlights from days 1 and 2 of the 2001 Bassmasters Classic champion, Kevin VanDam. You know, Kevin VanDam had a reputation of being the best bass angler who had never won the Classic. With 11 years on tour and fishing in his 11th Classic, Kevin would soon bring those rumors to a swampy end. Making a choice to fish in the Bayou Black area, Kevin found he had some immediate concerns.
My confidence level is pretty low right here right now just because it's been sprayed since we were here the other day, and when that vegetation's dying, it's hard to catch them.
Hoping to make the best of it, Kevin tested the early bite with a buzzbait.
I've never seen a mullet bite a lure before, and I just caught one. That's a gar. Caught every kind of trash fish so far, but that's what you have to deal with in the Classic. You've got to be able to make adaptations and change and things, and you have to be real observant too. The wind has got the water all the way out, and a lot of the areas just don't have enough water to hold fish right now. So I'm just going to keep moving. I'm learning as I'm going, and hopefully I get into an area that's got them. That's the good thing about here is if you get into them, well, you can catch a bunch in a hurry.
And that is exactly what he did. He caught his first keeper at 10 a.m., and within the hour, he added 3 more to his live well. A key factor to look for in an area was the combination of tidal current and cover.
One of the keys for me is to be able to find where the water is moving. It doesn't really matter which direction that it's going, but around these points and things like that, like this, you'll get more water movement.
Kevin finished day 1 with a limit of bass weighing 11 pounds 5 ounces, sitting in 3rd place. So Kevin, day 1 is in the books. You're in 3rd place, you've caught some fish. What does that do for your confidence now as far as heading to day 2?
Well, we really didn't know how good the fishing would be, and it took me a while to really even find the fish that I caught that first day. And it gave me a lot of confidence that, I knew the second day if I could go out there and expand on the area, expand on the pattern that I'd come up with the first day, that I had a chance to win.
How much went into your thinking? The fact that Barry is sitting out there, we don't know how fast it's coming toward New Orleans or if it changes course. Did you feel as though it could get so bad Saturday might be a wash, literally, and that you might have to have this thing in grasp on Friday?
The first day, the area that I was in, actually from the storm, the winds had blown the water out. The second day, I knew I would get one more day like that, and it really made the bass a lot more positioned on the pieces of cover that I was fishing. It made it easier to target them. And I knew the second day was the day that I had to catch as much as I could and really expand the area as much as possible, because the third day, if we had a direct hit, we wouldn't even been fishing.
That's right. Nobody knew. So right now, let's take a look at day 2. After finding that some of his key spots had been sprayed, Kevin did what he does best, adapt. Covering lots of water with a run-and-gun approach, Kevin had a limit by 10:15 a.m. His success depended on finding the right type of water.
This is my favorite way to catch them right here down here, and it's been really hard to find the right kind of water. See, these hyacinths here are really green and lively, and they're blown into this little pocket right here. And the bass, they just like to get underneath these. The roots hang down, and there's tons of shrimp and little frogs and stuff in here, and bass just love it in here. It gives them a good place to be in the shade. The water temperature is a lot cooler, and dropping a big jig down in there will catch them. But it's just so hard to find an area like this.
Kevin returned to the scales with 10 pounds 2 ounces, and that was enough to put him in the lead. Day number 3, the telling day. There's actually sun shining in New Orleans when we all got up. Hard to believe. What were your major concerns? What was going through your mind?
I knew that the storm was real close and that it would probably change the fishing, but I didn't really know until I got to my fishing spot what it was going to be like. The water had come up. Half of the area that I'd fished the day before had turned muddy, and I had a lot of concerns. I was really worried.
On the lip of the cup, and you knew that the Classic was within your grasp. We're going to take a timeout. When we come back, Kevin will talk about his strategy and also show us the lures that paved the way for him to become the Classic champion for 2001. We'll be right back.
The Bassmasters, brought to you by Long John Silver's, that one-of-a-kind taste. Evertroll, stay out longer, catch more fish. Flowmaster, the exhaust technology company. Ranger Boats, still building legends one at a time. And by Motor Guide. With Motor Guide, you can take on the world.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm Ron Franklin, along with 2001 Bassmasters Classic champion Kevin VanDam. And I guess the moment we've all been waiting for, and that is to get you to personally take us through that third day, the day that you won it.
Boy, I'll tell you, it was probably the toughest day of my fishing career. I mean, I went out there expecting to get bit early, and it took me a long time to get that first bite. And you know, it was 9:30 or 10 o'clock, and it took me a long time to get the second bite. And I just, you know, the water came up, it got muddy, and I was really beginning to wonder. But I did get a couple of bites, so I decided, you know, I made up my mind that I was going to stick it out in that area. And, you know, lo and behold, a little bit later on, I came to a wellhead, and, you know, I kept looking for the perfect water conditions, you know, the moving water, the right water clarity, because the hurricane had definitely messed up the area. And I came to a wellhead, and I said, this ought to hold a fish. And, you know, this is like new, 2 fish. I pitched in there with a jig. And, I mean, he just thumped it, and I set the hook and jerked him in the boat. Next pitch, I catch another one. And then I've got 4. So then I was, you know, the momentum was there. A little while later, I caught my 5th one. And, you know, I only caught 5 fish that last day. And I really thought, you know, because I had 1 small keeper and 4 good fish, that I needed to call that last one. And I just knew that I was, you know, that I was going to be able to do that. And, you know, I just didn't get any more bites.
Did you sleep on Friday night at all?
Well, I learned a long time ago that, you know, if you get wound up at the Classic and let the nerves and the hoopla get to you, it's going to hurt your performance. And I slept really well. I didn't have any expectations going into this Classic because I'd really had a pretty tough practice. And, you know, I wasn't, and I've been let down a lot of times in the past. So I slept like a baby.
Tell us about the structure that you focused on.
Well, I fished a lot of different types of cover in the area. Anything that provided some good shade cover. And my best cover for sure were these gas wellheads. You know, they hold a little more water on them, and they have a lot of shade, a lot of metal down there, a lot of, you know, bass like to get around that kind of stuff. Lay down trees were another thing. You know, there's very few lay downs with any water on them, and a lot of the bass I caught were, you know, in 6, 8, 10 inches of water. And then anywhere that there would be some grass blown in against one of these wellheads or against a tree or on a point or water hyacinths, anything like that, I'd flip any of that stuff that provides shade cover.
Kev, you've got 2 of your best friends here on the table that came from New Orleans. In fact, I'd put those in a plaque if I were you, because these were the weapons of choice that won it for you.
Yeah, the half-ounce Strike King Premier Elite jig was my #1 bait, without a doubt. I used a black, blue, and purple. It really matches the blue crabs, which are you know, a real prime food source for the bass there. And the heavier jig in that shallow water would make these fish react. You know, the water's hot. You know, they're probably doing most of their feeding at night. And that jig just, you know, falling like a bowling ball right down on top of them. They just would bite it without even thinking. And that was my #1 bait. This other bait here, it's kind of a creature bait. It's called a wild thing, and it's made by Strike King. That was kind of a bait that I use as a follow-up bait, and I use it as I'm going along between good pieces of cover, and I'd pitch it at grass clumps and kind of swim it up to a grass clump and then let it fall again. All my strikes came on the fall, and, you know, with all those appendages on there, it has a lot of action, and I caught several key fish on that.
And it did the job. My friend, I speak for myself and a lot of people, folks, that have followed your career. A great spokesman for professional bass fishing, and congratulations. Best of luck to you this year, and we'll see you again on the next Bassmasters.
Thanks a lot.
Now for Kevin VanDam, Ron Franklin saying thanks for joining us, and so long.
Kevin VanDam.
This has been a presentation of ESPN, the worldwide leader in sports. For more, log on to ESPN.com.